after the zombie apocalypse survivors began to get swine flu. Hello all. This is Jacobson and this is a short retelling of the first and second episodes of the fourth season of the zombie series The Walking Dead. You can see the previous episodes at the links in the video description. Thank you so much for participating and for the 1,200 subscribers. Hopefully we'll keep it up and by the next video we'll have 1,300 subscribers. Once this video gets 150 likes, I will release the next installment. Enjoy watching it. Rick walks outside to the scene of a sunny, calm day. He splashes water on his face, and the shot pans out to a vegetable garden towards which he is headed. Lining the gates of the garden lie a dozen walkers that have accumulated overnight, among which include a bloody-eyed walker. While listening to music and digging in the garden, Rick finds an M1911 handgun, fully loaded, which he examines for a moment and then tosses into his wheelbarrow. Carl walks towards Rick, complaining that his father had not awakened him. Rick says he had not done so due to the knowledge that Carl was up late reading comic books, and the two share a chuckle. Carl speaks of a pig that he calls Violet, laying in the corner of a pen. Mentioning it looks ill. Rick tells Carl he should not name the pigs as they are food, yet answers that he does not know the reason of the pig's illness. In the outdoor confines of the prison, Carol cooks breakfast for the residents. Daryl joins her, while numerous survivors thank him for his hunting, including a young man named Patrick. Carol makes a point that she liked him first and asks for a word with Daryl, transferring her cooking duties to Patrick. Patrick asks for a handshake from Daryl before he leaves to thank him for the venison he had hunted the day before. As they reach a secluded spot, Carol mentions the need for people at the gates. She says that others are speaking of a supply run, and notes that the walkers aren't spreading out across the fence like before. Glenn wakes up and talks with Maggie, telling her she should not accompany him on his supply run later in the day. There is no need. Maggie protests, saying everything will go smoothly, and Glenn agrees, yet persists that she should remain at the prison. Ultimately, Maggie agrees to this and Glenn takes her place. A group of survivors, including Karen, are clearing walkers that have built up along the gate perimeter. Tyrese approaches Karen, whom he calls beautiful, telling her of his discomfort with killing walkers along the gate due to the face-to-face contact. Karen questions why he volunteers to help at the gates, to which he responds that he wanted to get to know her better. Tyrese tells her he's going on the supply run. Karen gives him a good luck kiss, and tells him to be careful. Carl and Patrick come upon Lizzie and the other children, naming walkers as they stand at the prison fence. Carl angrily tells them that they shouldn't name walkers, and asks Lizzie if she had even seen someone become one. Lizzie angrily responds that she has, and walks off with the other children. Meanwhile, Herschel is telling Rick about planting more crops when Michonne arrives on horseback from a scouting run. Dismounting Flame, she hands Carl comics she found and talks briefly with Rick about her unsuccessful run. She volunteers to check the traps for any animals before the walkers get them, but Rick decides to go himself. As he leaves, Herschel tells Rick that their council, himself, Glenn, Carol, Daryl and Sasha, prefer that Rick take his gun along when he goes outside the gates for protection. Carl expresses interest in going on the supply run, but Rick tells him to stay and do his chores. He also suggests that Carl stay with Patrick, and attend story time with the other children. As the supply group gets ready to leave, Zach meets up with Beth, and the pair kiss each other goodbye. Bob volunteers to go along to earn his keep. After some hesitation and convincing from the others, Sasha allows him to come. Rick goes outside the perimeter to check the traps, when he encounters Clara, initially mistaking her for a walker. He is startled when she calls out to him, pleading for help. She asks if he is with a group, and begs him to take her and her husband Eddie with him. Rick tells her that if they answer 3 questions to his satisfaction, he will. Clara leads Rick in the direction their camp, so he can meet Eddie and ask his questions. Daryl, Zach, Sasha, Bob, and Tyrese reach an abandoned army encampment around a shopping mall. Daryl asks them to listen to the music booming in the distance, and notes that he had been part of a group that hooked it up to car batteries to draw the walkers away. The group approaches the front of the store, and Zach starts a conversation with Daryl. He tries to guess what Daryl's pre-apocalypse employment was. It is mentioned that this had been going on daily, for the past 6 weeks. Zach guesses a homicide cop, and Daryl affirms the guess. An incredulous Zach apparently doesn't believe it, and states he will keep on trying to guess. The group enters the mall, and Bob, the last to enter, notices a pair of legs on the ground. As he follows the others in, the rest of the walker's body is revealed to be on the roof, along with a crashed helicopter and several dozen walkers. As Rick and Clara walk through the forest, Clara tells him that she and her husband Eddie were about to go on their honeymoon when the apocalypse began. They were at the airport, preparing for a flight to Puerto Vallarta when the walkers attacked. She claims that the two of them were the only survivors, and credits her husband with saving her life on many occasions. She also mentions having to do certain things to stay alive, and seems hesitant to elaborate. Rick presses her, and she says they had to eat animal carcasses and rotten fruit. Additionally, they had to leave people behind. In the store, Bob approaches a wine, beer aisle and tries to resist taking a bottle. He eventually gives in, but after thinking about it, decides to put it back. This causes the entire shelf to tip over, falling on top of him and pinning his legs. The walkers on the roof hear the noise, and begin walking toward it. The decaying roof sheathing can't support their weight, and several fall through. Meanwhile, Rick and Clara continue walking and make small talk. Clara interrupts to ask Rick if he and his group had to do the things Eddie and I had to do. When Rick doesn't answer, she follows up with another question. Do you think you get to come back from them? Rick says he hopes so. Clara then says that she hopes she and Eddie answer the 3 questions satisfactorily. Back at the mall, walkers continue to fall through the ceiling. With Bob still trapped beneath the shelf, the others are able to fight them off. Daryl and Zach succeed in freeing Bob, but Zach is bitten soon after. As everyone else escapes, the wrecked helicopter falls through the roof, killing Zach and the remaining walkers in the process. As Rick and Clara finally approach the campsite, she says, "It is just ahead." She crouches over a small, suspicious-looking bundle, then suddenly attacks Rick with her knife. He manages to sidestep her, and Clara frantically explains that she intended to feed him to Eddie, who has turned. She then stabs herself in the abdomen, and collapses. As she lay dying, Clara tells Rick that she could not stand living without Eddie, so she took her own life to be with him. In a state of delirium, she pleads with Rick not to kill her after she turns. Her plan is to reanimate, and be with her husband in a zombified state. As Clara nears death, she asks Rick what the 3 questions were. He tells her, "How many walkers have you killed? How many people have you killed? Why?" She says that Eddie killed all the walkers for her until he died, and lists only herself as a human she has killed. To the last question, she responds, "You don't get to come back." Eddie's body is not shown, nor are the contents of the bundle. But as Rick walks away, the bundle is shown to be grunting and moving about. It is about the size of a human head. Carol is reading a story to the kids in the prison library. Carl is seen sneaking in, and appears to be eavesdropping. He notices one of the adults leaving, after which Carol stops reading and begins teaching the children how to use knives. She asks him not to tell his father, and Carl leaves in disgust. After returning to the prison yard, Rick looks over at the fences and focuses on a bloody-eyed walker. He then goes to the pig pen, and realizes that Violet has died. The supply group returns, and Glenn tells Maggie that Daryl intends to deliver the bad news to Beth. Maggie gets up to console her, but stops to tell Glenn that she is not pregnant. Glenn is relieved, but Maggie says they shouldn't be afraid of having a child, even in the world as it is. Glenn suggests that being afraid is what has kept them alive. Maggie disagrees, saying, "No, it's how we kept breathing." Daryl tells Beth what happened to Zach. She is surprisingly nonchalant, and resets the tally she was keeping of days without an accident. She tells Daryl that she doesn't cry anymore, and is glad she got to know Zach. She asks Daryl if he's okay, and he says he is tired of losing people. Beth walks up and hugs him. Michonne looks at a map, apparently making plans to search for the governor. Herschel tries to comfort Rick regarding what happened to Clara. Rick says that he could easily have become to what she was. Herschel disagrees, and says that people get to come back from what they do. However, Rick isn't convinced. Later that night, Bob lies in his bunk, reflecting on the day's events as Patrick stumbles toward the bathroom. He is obviously sick, and coughing violently. Without undressing, he walks into the showers and turns the water on. A few seconds later, he collapses on the floor with blood running from his mouth. He reanimates shortly after, with blood flowing from his eyes like the walkers Rick had seen previously. Late at night, an unknown person is shown feeding a rat to some of the fence walkers. The scene then swaps to Tyrese and Karen in the library, overlooking their lives, and then Tyrese begins playfully singing to her. They both then head back to their respective cells. Karen takes a detour to the showers to fill up a pitcher of water, where she hears movement, but finds nothing. After she exits, a zombified Patrick rises out of the shower, undetected. He exits the showers and follows her back to the cell block. He stops at her room, but is distracted by the coughing of another person and wanders into his cell and proceeds to bite out the man's throat, preventing him from calling for help. At dawn, Patrick has finished devouring the man, and the latter soon awakens as a walker. Glenn and Maggie are sleeping in the guard tower. After waking, and Glenn manages to take a photo of Maggie with the instant camera that he retrieved from the department store. Rick and Carl head out to tend to the pigs, and Carl asks if he can help with the fence cleaners, but Rick shuts the idea down. Carl apologizes and reassures his father that he is trying to live normally and asks if he can have his gun back. Before Rick can answer, they hear gunshots. Mika and Lizzie run out of cell block D, calling for help. A horde of walkers has attacked from within and killed several people. Michonne, who is just heading out on a supply run, is alerted to the chaos, but gets trapped by the prison gates with two fierce walkers. Just as the walkers manage to overpower her, Carl kills one of them. The other is kicked off by Michonne and then shot by Maggie. Michonne accidentally injures her leg on one of the snares, but is helped up by Maggie and Carl. In the cell block, the group clears out the walkers. Carol assists Ryan Samuels into a cell after he is bitten on the arm and prepares to amputate it, but finds that he has been bitten on the back of the neck as well. After the threat temporarily clears out, Daryl and Rick comb the area, searching for anyone bitten to ensure that they won't reanimate. When Glenn gets attacked by a walker, Daryl is able to shoot it in the head, and realizes that it was Patrick. Rick is initially hesitant about putting the people down, coming out of the first cell shaken and in a daze. Another bloody-eyed walker, Charlie, emerges from a cell and is put down by Rick. They realize that since Charlie locked himself in his cell due to his sleepwalking, that there was no way that he could have been bitten. Rick, Herschel, Drive, Subramanian, Daryl, and Bob gather around Charlie's body, noting that he has no bites or scratches. Subramanian recognizes the blood leaking out of Charlie's orifices as an indicator of a disease, and this prompts Rick to mention Violet, the deceased pig that he encountered a little while ago. Subramanian explains that diseases like the one that killed Patrick were spread by feral pigs and birds in the old days, and Bob notes that they all thrive in close quarters, like the cell block. They conclude that everyone in the cell block could indeed be infected by the flu. Ryan realizes that he is dying, and asks Carol to take care of Lizzie and Mika for him as if they were her own. Carol agrees, but also tells him that he has to let them say goodbye to him, before she kills him. As Lizzie and Mika reluctantly do so, Carol tells them what she has to do, but Lizzie volunteers to do it instead. At the last minute she is unable to stab her father in the head and turns away crying as Carol takes back the knife and does it herself. Carol, Herschel, Daryl, Sasha, and Glenn think of what to do with the people who might have been infected, including a suggestion to quarantine them in cell block A, former death row. They then hear coughing outside of the room. It's shown to be coming from Karen, who was walking by with Tyrese. She is told that she must be quarantined in the tombs while they find out what the cause is. Sasha, as well as Karen herself, calms Tyrese, stating that it is necessary. As she leaves, Karen also mentions that David was coughing as well. Carl and Maggie are carrying Michonne back inside when Rick approaches them. He tells them what happened and assures Maggie that Herschel and Glenn seem to be fine. However, he says that they must stay away from him for now, due to him possibly being infected. Beth is then seen dressing Michonne's wound when the latter says that she made a mistake of letting the two walkers get the better of her. She bitterly says that Maggie and Carl should have left her. Beth says that she is being foolish. People getting hurt is part of living with a group. She muses about those who died, wondering what you call a parent who's lost a child. Michonne begins to tear up, but composes herself immediately and Beth doesn't notice. Later, she asks Michonne to hold Judith while she cleans up the mess Judith made on her. Michonne looks at Judith with indifference, but then loses control and weeps while holding Judith close, hinting that something horrible might have happened in her distant past. Carol goes to talk to Mika and Lizzie, as they stand by the fence. She turns to Lizzie and tells her that Ryan asked her to take care of them and says bluntly that Lizzie has become weak, and that in this world, she can't be. Lizzie begins crying about how they killed someone, and Carol realizes that she is referring to Nick, the walker that she named. Lizzie runs away and Mika explains that Lizzie is not weak, but messed up. Daryl is digging graves for those who had died when Rick comes by to assist. Daryl tells Rick that he's earned his time away from being in the position of a leader. Then, Maggie screams for them to follow her. It's shown that a massive group of walkers, possibly drawn by the gunfire from earlier, is converging at a portion of the fence that is about to give way. Despite the efforts of Glenn, Sasha and even a few others, there are just too many walkers. Sasha points out the carcasses of several dead rats, suggesting that someone has been luring the walkers to the fence, which explains why they are clustering together, instead of spreading out. Rick, getting an idea on what to do, tells Daryl to get one of the trucks. The two lead the walkers a few meters away and Rick pulls out one of the piglets. He then cuts its femoral artery and leaves it for the walkers to devour. He repeats this several times before the walkers are a safe distance away. Rick appears to be mourning as he kills each piglet, and seems to be significantly affected when the last piglet's blood splatters all over his face. Meanwhile, Carol finds Lizzie and Mika near the fence looking at walkers once again. Carol assures her that she needs to be strong in letting her father go and not to run away from her fear of the walkers but to face them. She puts a flower in Lizzie's hair. Lizzie takes the knife from Carol's hand, and proudly puts it in her belt. Carl finds his father about to burn up the pig pen. Rick explains that they either got the virus from the pigs or that we infected them. He then tells Carl that they need to stay away from Judith for a while to protect her from possibly getting infected. Carl then tells Rick about Carol teaching the kids how to use knives, but asks that Rick not confront her, as he believes she is right in doing so. Rick promises not to. He then pulls out his gun and holster and hands it back to Carl, as he now fully trusts that his son will use it for good. Rick lights several matches and burns the pigpen to the ground. Then, Rick takes off his bloody shirt and throws that into the fire as well. Tyrese is seen going to Karen's isolated cell in the tombs with some flowers in his arms, only to find her missing. He follows a trail of blood leading down the hallway to an outside door, where he sees the burnt corpses of both Karen and David. Karen is recognizable by her bracelet. The end of the first and second series. As soon as this video gets 150 likes and 25 comments, I will release a sequel.